The Pope is consecrating Russia. A popular conservative commentary announced that he and his husband are having two babies. Lots of scare quotes there. And a man dominates in a women's sport. We'll cover that and more in today's Crisis Weekly Wrap-Up. Today is March 18th, 2022, and I'm Eric Sammons. So the big news in the Catholic world this week is definitely Pope Francis announcing that he will consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And at the same time, a cardinal will do the same at Fatima. Now, this is huge news because, of course, the consecration of Russia has been which was requested by Our Lady of Fatima back in 1917, again in 1929. It has always been a source of controversy. I wrote an article about this in Crisis yesterday on March 17th, all the controversies and questions surrounding it. But even bigger news, I think, is the fact that it seems that Pope Francis is trying to follow Our Lady's instructions, because that's been the controversy in the past, is that previous papal consecrations didn't necessarily follow what Our Lady requested. But this one, it does seem to appear, at least on the surface, that Pope Francis is trying, because he just announced, I think it was last night, that he will invite all the bishops of the world to join him in the act of consecration. I think he's going to send them a text in their own language, and he's asking them to all do it at the same time. And this is going to happen on March 25th, the Feast of the Annunciation, a week from today. And this is, I don't see how you can see this in anything but good news. I know that some people might be sticklers for exactly how it's said and all this, but the fact is that Our Lady requested that Russia be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart by the Pope in union with all the bishops of the world. She didn't clarify any more than that what that meant. And that's what he's doing. That's what Pope Francis is doing. He's naming Russia. He's consecrating it to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And he is also inviting all the bishops of the world to unite with him. Now, whether or not all the bishops of the world do actually perform the consecration, I don't see how it's possible that we could guarantee that every single one will. But this seems to be at least the Pope following Our Lady's request. So I'm very hopeful. I do think, though, we have to temper our expectations. Our Lady said that if this happens, that Russia will be converted and there will be a period of peace. We don't know exactly what that means and what that would look like for Russia to be converted and for there to be a period of peace. There's never been an era of true peace in the world since the fall of man, not even after the coming of Jesus Christ. So I don't think we should set our expectations too high. But I do think, though, that it's very plausible that after this consecration, that there will be benefits from heaven, I guess is the best way to put it, from it. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I think we should all pray in union with the Pope and the bishops on this. In other news, COVID seems to be disappearing. Just, I guess, springtime, when viruses respiratory viruses like this normally disappear, it's disappearing as well. But more importantly, it seems like it's so much down on the news now that most of the mandates have gone away. I saw where, like in Ohio, only like 2% of the schools still have a mask mandate. It should be 0, but still, that's good. There still is a federal mask mandate on travel on planes, and I think on other forms of public transportation, which is just stupid. And they are trying to overturn that. I think that's in effect till April 18th. I believe that's right. And so hopefully that will go away very soon as well. And Senator Rand Paul is working to get Fauci ousted, which is always a good thing. I think to eliminate the position totally, but definitely to get Fauci out of here, because he's one of the most disastrous bureaucrats we've ever had in the history of America. And that's saying something. I do think, though, there's a really good chance that in the fall, if we need another crisis, that COVID will come back, that will institute more lockdowns. It'll be in the news. I think it'll just depend on what the news cycle is. If the media needs another crisis, I think COVID will supply that crisis in the fall. So we'll just have to be prepared for that. In other news, Dave Rubin, and I will be honest here, I am not very familiar with Dave Rubin before this week. I'd heard of him. I knew he was considered conservative, but I didn't know anything about him. But he announced that he and his husband, and of course it's not his husband because a man can't have a husband, David Janet, they will be having, I saw where it said they will be having twins. Now, everything about this, conservative commentator and his husband having twins, like almost every word in that is false. He's obviously not conservative, because if you don't want to conserve the traditional family of a man and a woman married together with their kids, then there's nothing worth conserving. So he's not conservative. Second, obviously, this Mr. Janet is not his husband, because, like I said, a man can't marry a husband. They're not having babies or twins because it's neither of them have a womb in order to have children, and so they're not having kids like that. And they're not twins because, according to the announcement, they're being born at 2 months apart. So I don't really know where the twins came from, but they're having. My assumption is that 2 of their attempts at surrogacy succeeded. And so they're just going to keep both of those. And I wouldn't be surprised if other ones failed and just had to abort those, or whatever happened. But this is evil. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Surrogacy is evil. Basically, what's happening is 2 rich white guys are renting out wombs of women who are probably not very financially well off. It's a terrible, evil practice, surrogacy is. And so I just... what's so disappointing is that many supposed conservative media outlets and conservative personalities have not condemned this, have not been willing to speak out on this, like they would, for example, when a liberal would do this. They've spoken out in the past. I'm pretty sure, like the Daily Wire, which is a conservative outlet, I don't think any of their people have spoken out. And there's Catholics there, Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles. I don't think either of them has spoken out on it, and they're supposedly Catholic. So I just think this is very unfortunate, but it shows where the conservative movement is today. If I don't even really consider myself a conservative, I don't call myself a conservative anymore, because I don't want to associate myself with those people, because it's not conservatism. All it is liberalism 2 steps behind. And so I think true conservatives, people who actually want to conserve what is good about our culture, and what has been good about our culture, it's a dying breed, and it's not part of the official conservative movement anymore. If we're going to endorse something like this, well, what's the point of being a conservative movement? Other news is that there's been more American warmongering, as always. President Zelensky, the Ukrainian President Zelensky, addressed U.S. Congress this week. And here's the thing, I want to make it very clear. I do not blame Zelensky for asking for any aid he can get. His duty is to his people, to the Ukrainian people. He should be asking for as much as he can. I mean, I get that. However, it's up to Americans to realize this isn't our war, and we should not be entering into it. Because even though many people are suffering and dying in Ukraine, all Americans' entrance into the war would mean is that many more people would suffer and die. It would not help the matter at all. And so when Zelensky asked for a no-fly zone, that is an act of war by America if they instituted a no-fly zone. Because what that means is if a Russian plane flew over Ukraine, an American missile would shoot it down. I don't know anybody on earth who would not consider that an act of war. And I guarantee Vladimir Putin would consider it an act of war. And so we have to resist. America has to resist entering into this war in any military fashion, because it would just end up risking much more carnage and damage and suffering. Also, though, there are talks ongoing between Russia and Ukraine about Ukraine becoming neutral. The latest word is that the idea of Ukraine basically becoming a Switzerland. They would agree not to join NATO. They would agree not to take sides. And I think, honestly, this sounds like a great situation if that was the case. If Ukraine was neutral, I think that's a win-win situation for everybody. And I know people want Putin to lose and Russia to lose, but in the real world, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes countries that have a lot of power, have a lot of nuclear weapons, they sometimes have to win as well, even if we just want it to be a lesser win potentially. But making Ukraine neutral, I think, is something to pray for, that could happen. In other news, in sports news, which we don't really cover here, but it has something to do with our culture, someone named Leah Thomas was announced the winner of the NAACP championship in the 500-yard freestyle women's swimming. So why does that matter? Because he's a man. Leah, it's L-I-A. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Leah Thomas. His real name is Will. His birth name was Will, and he's a man, but he's pretending to be a woman, calling himself transgender, of course. And he's a swimmer. I think he was the 400-something ranked swimmer in the world when it came to men. But, of course, he's the women's #1 ranked swimmer. and he dominated the competition. And this is just showing the insanity of the transgender movement. And it's a terrible thing. But I do think there's a possibility of a silver lining here, because this is destroying feminism. This idea that men and women are the same. They're not the same. They're not the same. And we see it. If you have eyes to see, you can see it. But most people have closed their eyes through feminism to think that men and women are the same. And sports is a great place where it's just shown very obviously, because sports is a meritocracy. If you can't do it physically, then you just don't, you can't compete. And everybody knows that men are better than women at almost any physical sport that there is, including swimming. And so when a biological male, when a man joins in a women's competition, he's going to crush them if he's a good swimmer as a man. Obviously, that doesn't mean I would beat any of these women. I would get crushed. But a top man is always going to be a top woman in just about any sport. And that's what's happening here. And so the good news, I guess, is that hopefully people are saying, yeah, there is a difference between men and women. God created us differently. Women have their strengths. Men have their strengths. When it comes to physical activities, men are often dominant in these physical activities. I want to congratulate Emma Wyatt, who was announced as a second place finisher in the event, but she's obviously the real winner. She's the winner. So congratulations, Miss Wyatt. Also, I think good news is that the crowd there, they cheered for the second place finisher. They did not cheer for Thomas. They did not cheer for him. They instead cheered when Miss Wyatt finished. And so that's good news as well. People are starting to see when it's this obviously stupid, people see that and they react accordingly. Finally, this week in news is daylight savings time occurred last Saturday, or last Sunday, I guess, in which we leaped ahead an hour. And there was a Senate bill in the U.S. Senate that passed unanimously. I don't know of any bills that pass unanimously in the Senate anymore, to make daylight savings time permanent. So we would not have any time changes anymore. It would go into effect in 2023, not this next one. But it would basically make daylight savings time permanent in America, all through America. And so it could become law. There's talk that really, obviously, if it passes unanimously in the Senate, it has to go to the House now. And obviously, President Biden has to sign it. Now, I will say that I'm very happy. I'd be very happy not to have changed clocks anymore. It's a stupid practice. I also do like daylight savings time better, because I like light in the evening more than I do in the morning. And because in the morning I get up, I don't go outside in the morning. And so I'm outside much more in the evening. So I think I would prefer daylight savings time all throughout the year. However, I think there have been some studies shown that standard time would be better. And standard time is the time of the rest of the world. So it does seem to be more fitting that if we're going to make one of them permanent, it would be standard time. But anyway, hopefully, I just think if we can stop changing the clocks, that'd be a great thing. Okay, I think I'm just going to wrap it up there. Until next time, everybody, God love you.